why don't we go ahead and get started? I'll start by introducing myself. I am a tour guide at Vanderbilt, and I'm a second-year student in Peabody and Arts and Science, and my majors are secondary education and math. And I'm from Yardley, Pennsylvania, which is like a quaint little suburb outside of Philadelphia. Dr. Bruff, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit? Just talk about what you do, how long you've been at Vanderbilt, maybe what brought you here.
Yeah, so my name is Dr. Derek Bruff. I am the director of the Vanderbilt University Center for Teaching, and also a principal senior lecturer in mathematics. So my academic background is mathematics. I actually got my PhD at Vanderbilt back in 2003. And so I spent about 5 years as a graduate student at Vanderbilt. And then I went away for a couple of years. I taught in the math department at Harvard for a little while, and then had the opportunity to come back to Nashville and to Vanderbilt. And I think, there's lots of threads there, but I realized while I went to graduate school to become a college math professor and teach math. And while I was there, while I was at Vanderbilt in that capacity, I was, getting my PhD, I was doing math research, I was teaching calculus, and I really got interested in teaching as a field, and how the choices we make as teachers can affect students' learning and student experience and student motivation. And so my work at Harvard actually involved a lot of kind of preparing new teachers. So we, at Harvard at the time, calculus was taught in small sections. So we had all these graduate students and postdocs and junior faculty teaching calculus, and they didn't necessarily have a lot of teaching experience. So part of my role was to help train them and prepare them and mentor them in teaching. And I really, really enjoyed that kind of work. I've always been an enthusiastic teacher myself, and I've enjoyed, like I say, kind of looking at the array of choices we have as teachers to try to create meaningful experiences for our students. And so a position at the Vanderbilt Center for Teaching opened up in 2005 as an assistant director. And it was kind of a big career change for me to go from a faculty position to a staff position, to go from kind of something that lived within a math department only to something that worked across the entire university. But that was really exciting. And I knew Nashville was great. I'd lived there for 5 years, and I knew it was a place I could call home for a while. So I've been at the Center for Teaching on staff now for 15 years. I was an assistant director for a while, and now I'm the director. We've got about 12 of us at the unit. And our mission is to kind of support the teaching mission of Vanderbilt, but we do it in a kind of indirect way. So I teach one course a year in the math department, and so I have actual students I work with. Miles was one of my students last year. But then I also, both myself and my staff, we work with hundreds of professors across campus and help them think through the choices they're making as teachers. Help them develop new approaches to teaching, try new things out in their classrooms, and basically equip them to teach really effectively. And so that work we do, the kind of professional development work we do with professors and TAs, teaching assistants, means that we have a really big impact on the student experience at Vanderbilt. Indirectly, right? Like we're not working regularly with students ourselves, but we're working with the professors and helping them think through their course design, their assignment design, their discussion leading strategies. This summer, it was all about how they taught online and hybrid modes. And so it's really satisfying work for me because I get to work with a lot of really incredible faculty who are really passionate about their teaching and about students. And I get to do that kind of across all the disciplines. So I'm a kind of a mathematician at heart, but I love to talk to folks in the School of Music or in Peabody or in engineering or, history department about how they teach and kind of what learning looks like in those contexts. And so the kind of interdisciplinary nature of my work is a lot of fun too.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'll definitely follow up on a lot of those points. We have a lot to talk about. Before I kept going with the questions, I did want to say to all of the participants and comment on the difficult times that we're all living through right now in this country. Vanderbilt tour guides, Vanderbilt faculty, and the admissions stands firmly against police brutality, and we support the fight for justice and equality for Black Americans. In addition, we hope that all of you guys are safe and healthy at home. Given the current coronavirus pandemic, obviously life is very different, but we're all working through it the best we can. And we know this is also a super chaotic time to be applying to colleges. It probably looks very different than it has in recent years, and that's why we're trying to deliver these virtual platforms to you guys. And then also, I know the admissions process is being really holistic and context-based in their evaluation of students. So trust that they're working as hard as they can on that side as well. Anyways, why don't we start off by talking about, so you teach first year students a lot, right? So I had Dr. Bruff as my professor for a first year writing seminar. How would you describe the importance of a relationship between a first year student and their professor, and how does that relationship often develop in the classroom?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think I think about the kind of teaching and learning conditions we're under. And so for me, one of the important variables is class size. So you'll probably take 4, 5, 6 classes a semester. And some of those will be very large classes with, especially your first year, you might have 200 students in a class. But some of them will be small classes. And one of the things I like about Vanderbilt is that all 4 of the undergraduate colleges and schools make an effort to make sure that students, first year students in particular, have some small classes. Because the ability to kind of forge a relationship with the professor is a lot higher in those small classes. So when I've got 15 students in my first year writing seminar, I get to know them, right? I get to find out kind of what their educational background is, what their professional interests are, maybe some of their personal interests. I can try to kind of connect the course material in ways to those personal and professional interests. I'm more available to provide feedback and ideas and kind of mentoring in those small classes. It can happen in the large classes as well, but I think the kind of one-on-one relationships tend to be a lot stronger in the small classes, because if you've only got 15 or 20 students, you've just got more capacity to kind of get to know those students as individuals. And so that means things like a writing assignment where I get to give lots of good feedback and we get to kind of work on your writing over time, or a creative project where you get to kind of pick a thread or a theme or a topic or even a medium that you'd like to explore more, and I can kind of help you build an assignment around that. Yeah. I think in the larger classes, what you often see is faculty who have very clear expectations for students, like this is what we're gonna have to do. Sometimes those expectations are very high, but they usually come with a lot of resources. Like here's what we expect in this course, and here are the resources you need to kind of get there and to achieve those expectations. And so I think one of the threads in both of those environments is faculty at Vanderbilt. All the student-faculty relationships are going to vary, certainly, but I think most Vanderbilt faculty really want their students to succeed. And so in a big class, that often comes through structure and clear expectations and lots of resources. And in smaller classes, it comes through that kind of personal attention as you get to know your students and really figure out, how can I help this particular student do something interesting, do something they've never done before, develop their skills, or just generally succeed.
Yeah, so you mentioned first year writing seminars and how those are kind of first classes. The first small class that you might have at Vanderbilt, do you want to talk a little bit about those, and then how, I want to ask because I've taken the class, but I think it would be cool for prospective students to hear about how you've been creative in changing a course that could typically be just like a lot of reading and writing into something that might be a little bit more than, reading and writing papers and taking exams.
Yeah, so the course that I teach, so in the College of Arts and Science, every first year undergraduate is required to take a first year writing seminar, and every department is required to offer a first year writing seminar. And so that means you see writing seminars in math and chemistry and physics and other places that don't generally do a lot of writing instruction, right? Like you would expect the English department and the history department and the philosophy department to have a lot of writing seminars, but all of our departments do. And so the different departments have found different ways to kind of do first year writing, right? To have a writing intensive course for students who aren't necessarily majors and may not have a ton of background in that particular discipline. And so, how can you do that in a way that kind of welcomes people in right from the get-go? Now, English is going to offer a whole lot of different writing seminars every semester, right? Math will only have one or two. um, but mine is a course on cryptography. So that's secret writing, right? Codes and ciphers. And so we do, the subtitle is like the history and mathematics of codes and code breaking. And so we look at cryptography over the ages, right? From kind of classical cryptography you would do with pencil and paper up through the kind of modern roles for cryptography, which gets us into issues of encryption and privacy and surveillance. And so it's a really, I mean, it's the best course actually. It's just the best course. Like
I would second that. It's the best course.
We do history, we do current events, we do pure mathematics, right? We look at a lot of the mathematics that is associated with these different encryption schemes. We do a lot of kind of code making and puzzle solving kind of stuff, and writing instruction, right? So we have some writing assignments. I assign a novel every year. It's usually Little Brother, a novel by Cory Doctorow that looks at kind of privacy and surveillance and security issues in a pretty engaging way. We do a class podcast. We've been doing this for the past few years. I was initially worried about kind of doing an audio assignment and a writing course, but then I realized how much writing is involved in podcasting. And so I'll have my students, each student will do about a 10-minute episode looking at a particular code or cipher from history and kind of telling its story, like where did it come from, who used it, why was it interesting. There's a kind of technical communication piece to this because you often have to explain the mathematics behind these codes and ciphers through nothing but audio, right? Which is an interesting challenge. And some storytelling, right? Like thinking about how we use our words, how we use music, how we use sound effects to try to tell the story here. And I've done that now for 3 years. And so if you look for One Time Pod in your favorite podcast app, that's our class podcast. There's about 36 episodes out, all student work, right? And so, and this is what I said earlier about one of the advantages of the small classes is that you can do, I mean, we do a research-based writing assignment as well, right? A kind of more traditional argumentative essay based around research. So we do some traditional writing assignments, but we do some non-traditional writing assignments. And I think by having that variety, it allows students to kind of find something they can really speak into that connects with them. And so they may not, I mean, most of my students have barely even listened to podcasts, much less made one before I asked them to do it. But you learn the skills, you learn the tools pretty quickly. But getting to pick your topic and deciding kind of which part of history you want to dive into, how you want to tell your story, there's a lot of freedom there. And I find that students respond to that pretty well. Kind of finding something of personal interest in the subject. We also do some pretty fun experiential stuff. The highlight of the semester is often, I call it Flex Day because that's all it says in the syllabus. And I tell my students it's just because you might get behind and you need a Flex Day on your syllabus, but actually it's basically an escape room that I put on for my students in the classroom. And they walk into class and there's an encrypted message on the chalkboard and a locked box at the front of the room with a padlock on it. And they just have to work together for an hour to crack the code on the chalkboard, which leads them to another code somewhere else, which leads them to another code somewhere else. And eventually they get the combination for the lockbox at the front of the room. And it's fun. I think last year I walked in and I'm like, here you go, good luck. And I walked out and you guys just went to town. And it's fun to watch the students cooperate, right? Take what they've learned so far in the semester and kind of solve this challenge and see if they can do it in 50 minutes or less.
Yeah.
It's great fun.
Awesome. So with that, we talked about collaboration between students and students getting to know each other, kind of shifting that obviously now where so much learning is taking place in a virtual setting. How do you think teachers have been adapting to this virtual setting and specifically providing ways for student faculty interaction that isn't asynchronous lectures or really just kind of trying to mimic that's not a word, mimic the
it should be
classroom the classroom setting in like a Zoom setting?
Yeah, so, and really there's a couple of avenues, right? One is through Zoom and through kind of live class sessions that happen through Zoom. And the other is done asynchronously through Brightspace is our course management system. And so in both cases, I think there's a couple of goals that faculty have. Things that come quite naturally in the in-person classroom, what I would call social presence, right? Where like you feel like you're actually in class with other human beings, right? Who have personalities and who have experiences and that you can kind of create relationships with, right? Often, even in like a really large lecture hall, you still have the 5 kids you sit with, right, every day, and you see them and you say, "How was your weekend?" Right? Like there's a real sense of social presence. And in a smaller class, like the whole class often has that social presence as they get to know each other. And the other is kind of teacher presence. Like, does the instructor feel like they're there? They have a plan. They're there to support you and back you up and give you the feedback that you need to kind of to do well. And so if you're meeting synchronously on Zoom, right, you can still do all of that. You just need a different kind of set of tools, right? And so we've been helping a lot of faculty think through how do you lead discussion on Zoom and how do you kind of engage with students in that setting. And so, you know, there's different ways to go about it. I'm fond of what I call a ready, set, go question. So I'll pose a question and I'll have all the students compose a response in the text chat, but not to hit enter until I say go. And so everyone has a chance to kind of think about their own answer before they see what other people write. And then everyone hits enter at the same time and you see all these responses. And now I've heard from all of my students, right, which is actually hard to do in the physical classroom, to kind of get a response from every student. Miles knows I'm a big fan of having some type of in-class polling system where you can do some things like that too. But this Ready, Set, Go is really great because then I see all these answers from my students and I can start to say, oh, well, Miles has an interesting comment. Let me ask him to turn on his mic and share a little bit more about that. And so it's a simple structure, right? But it's a really nice way to hear from all of your students, to get kind of their perspective on the topic, and then to kind of use that to launch into some more video interaction. Over on the asynchronous side, right, thinking about discussion boards and other assignments that you might have students do where you ask them to kind of pull in some of their own personality or their own experiences or their own perspectives. I've been really a fan this summer. A lot of faculty have learned about a tool called Perusal, which is a way to have students collaboratively annotate a reading, kind of highlight things in the text and add comments in the margin and respond to each other's comments. And so that's really interesting. Like to think, usually when you're doing the reading for the class, it's just you and the paper, right? And maybe your own highlighter and your own notes. But to make that a collaborative social process, I think is another way that you help to foster social presence in an online class. And so my center, we packed about a year's worth of work in about 4 months this summer. We ran a 2-week online course design institute for professors at Vanderbilt. And we had, I think, 490 faculty participate over the summer. We ran it every 2 weeks, all summer long. And it was 2 weeks of getting ready to teach online, right? And how do you do this? What are the tools? What are the pedagogies? What are the strategies? And we've, like, last year in our Course Design Institute, we had 18 faculty participate. This year it was 490. And so, you know, a lot of folks at Vanderbilt needed to figure out how to do this online thing well. And so we were working hard all summer, and it was inspiring to see all the creativity and energy and determination that our faculty brought to the task this summer, so they could get ready for the fall and really teach effectively in this environment that's challenging and really very new for most of them.
Yeah, and I would definitely say from the student's perspective too, there's a world of difference between the kind of emergency online teaching that we kind of experienced in March, April, May, and then coming back this year and seeing teachers equipped with a whole new set of tools. And it really has been much better than I expected, even sitting in front of Zoom for an ungodly amount of hours every day.
Right.
But let's see. Oh, and I also wanted to chime in one more time. Participants, if you guys want to ask questions or have any concerns or literally anything, just throw it in the chat, throw it in the question box. We can answer that. But kind of shifting gears to a more Vanderbilt specific perspective, what do you think is unique about the undergraduate experience at Vanderbilt? And what, with that, what's been your favorite part of working with Vanderbilt students? What's unique about, Vanderbilt students?
Yeah, I'm assuming most of our audience has heard a little bit about Vanderbilt Immersion. This is a relatively new requirement at Vanderbilt that all of our undergraduates have this kind of immersion project. And it could be a research project you do with a faculty member. It could be a really robust study abroad program that you do. It could be an internship, right? It could be something that no one else has ever done before, right? You might write a book. I'm working with a student now who's really interested in board games and game design. And so he's looking at maybe doing a board game design to kind of foster social change and change people's opinion. And like, how do you design a game like that? And so there was a study that came out a few years ago from, I think it was Gallup. And they looked at college alumni. And they measured things like job satisfaction and life satisfaction. And they asked them a lot of questions about what their college experience was. And two of the best predictors of satisfaction, 5-10 years out of college, was having a faculty mentor while you were in college and engaging in some big open-ended project. And that research came out and I was like, oh, that's Vanderbilt Immersion, right? Like those are the two main ingredients, right? You've got a faculty mentor on this kind of big significant project that means something to you that is kind of open-ended, right? Like you don't necessarily know kind of where it's going to go when you start. But that's life, right? Like when you get into jobs and careers, you often take on things that you don't know where they're going to go when you start. And so I like that Vanderbilt has this institutional commitment to doing immersion. Because I think those types of experiences are really valuable for students. I do little versions of this in my own class, right? The podcast project is a kind of small immersive type of experience. And we work with a lot of faculty at my center who are building, we call it students as producers, engaging students as producers of knowledge, doing work for the general public, doing kind of creative open-ended projects. We still have lots of courses at Vanderbilt that are, learn this stuff, take an exam, learn this stuff, take an exam. But we're seeing more and more faculty adopt a more kind of project-focused approach to their courses, engaging their students not just as consumers of information, but as producers of knowledge. And so I love that we're in a campus that embraces that. And I think one of the factors is that Vanderbilt has this thing where we're trying to be kind of a liberal arts college and a research university at the same time. And I think we often get that right. Like you get the faculty mentorship that you would find at a small liberal arts college, but you have the breadth of options in terms of projects and areas to explore that you would find at a research university. And so I think that's kind of Vanderbilt's sweet spot, is that we're kind of good at both of those things and they come together in Vanderbilt Immersion. So that's, for me as the director of the teaching center, it's very exciting to see this move towards immersion and immersive course experiences, because I think that's where a lot of deep learning happens for students. As they dig into something that's kind of hard and open-ended, but often connected to their personal or professional interests. And again, part of my job is to help faculty all over campus think about how do we do that? How do we structure these assignments? How do we support students when they do it? And so it's really fun work.
Yeah, it seems like it. And kind of going off that, you mentioned you're like mentoring a student who's thinking about this board game design project. Are there any other cool experiences you've had in mentoring students, or being their advisor, or other advisors who you've heard have cool stories about helping students kind of pursue a passion, find an internship, get a job, speak to that kind of faculty-student relationship at Vanderbilt?
Yeah, and so that happens in different ways, right? Sometimes it's your actual academic advisor, right? Your faculty advisor. Sometimes it's a faculty member you're working with because you're in a research lab and you're involved in, some science research of some sort. It could be your faculty head of house, right? At the Commons, or the faculty who lead at our residential colleges. Lots of different ways that you might intersect with faculty, not just kind of in your own courses. I think the faculty advisor role is a really important one, right? After you declare your major, you'll have a faculty advisor, and there's a short-term component to that, like what courses are you going to take next semester, and what makes sense, and which professors would be a great fit for you. But that's often in the context of some long-term conversations. What do you want to do with this major that you picked? What kind of career do you want? What kind of lifestyle do you want? Is graduate school going to be, important for you? And thinking about kind of where do you want to be 5-10 years out? And then what does that mean for next semester and the courses that you're picking, right?
Right.
And so it's been fun. I haven't had a ton of formal advisees. I've had a few in the math department over the years. And math is an interesting one because it's not entirely obvious what you're going to do with a math degree.
Right.
I mean, if you couple it with a secondary ed, then there's a little clarity there, right? But there's a lot of directions you can go with a math degree. And so it's been fun to work with some students to think through, here's what I like about mathematics. Here's what I like about my math classes. Here's what appeals to me. What are some career paths that would kind of leverage that and let me do more of that? Because either it's fun or it appeals to me or I'm good at it. And then thinking through, okay, if that's the career path you want to go on, then what are some courses you could take while you're at Vanderbilt? Or what might your immersion project look like that would help you kind of round out your skill set in really useful ways? And that's, I said earlier, you've got these big classes, you've got these smaller classes, and then you've got these one-on-one relationships with faculty. And that's where the faculty member really can help you think through some kind of real and important personal choices about your life and your career.
Right.
And know you well enough to help you do that well.
Yeah, big decisions, I guess.
Yeah.
Things that I'm not thinking about yet.
You got plenty of time.
Yeah. And then one more question I wanted to ask you is about research opportunities at Vanderbilt. To what extent have you seen students been able to get involved with research opportunities and how they can kind of go about doing that, in different departments or in the math department, in STEM, in humanities, and all types of stuff?
Yeah, so I'm always kind of surprised at like the first year students who come to me in the spring and want a letter of recommendation for some research team that they want to join, right? Summer after their first year. I'm like, that's assertive. That's good. So yeah, there's lots of opportunities, and sometimes you find them by making a connection with an individual faculty member, right? You take a course with them in the spring and you ask them kind of, hey, do you have any spots for an undergraduate to work with you in some capacity? And many faculty do. Certainly in the kind of science and engineering disciplines on campus, they've got labs and teams, and there's lots of slots for students to kind of work there. Sometimes you go through departments, right? You want to do research in chemistry, and so the department itself will provide some opportunities, like a listening session where you can hear from several different faculty about kind of what their research looks like and then follow up with one of them, or kind of menu of options that they might provide for students who are interested in doing research. We have a really great summer research program. I'm trying to remember what the acronym stands for, but it's just Vanderbilt University Summer Research Program, I think, VUSRP. And it provides funding, living expense kind of funding for students to spend the summer at Vanderbilt and work with a faculty mentor. Overall, we have, I think, more research opportunities in the STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. But we also have some in the social sciences and humanities as well. And in fact, some of our social sciences have really robust research teams as well. And so they've got lots of slots for undergrads. The humanities faculty tend to work more one-on-one with students, so they won't have, a whole bunch. But some of them, I'm thinking of like our anthropology department is just full of rock stars who take great trips down to South America every year and take students with them to do that kind of research. So lots of opportunities. I do think this is a place where students have to show a little initiative, right? We've got these kind of clearly marked doors that you can walk through, but like you've got to find the door and open it and walk through, right? And so a little bit of initiative goes a long way at Vanderbilt in terms of research opportunities, because there are a lot of paths that you can follow. But I would say in your first year, start to think about kind of what makes sense for you and how can you start to open some of those doors.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. We're just about out of time, but anything else you wanted to touch on or add before we wrap up today?
I'm going to put a link in the chat because I had this ready. Let me grab this real quick. I almost had it ready. There we go. See if this works. Yeah, there we go. So this is a link to a page about an event that we run at the Center for Teaching every year. I don't know if we'll do it in January. This year is weird. Most years we do it. It's called the Celebration of Learning. And as I said, we work with a lot of faculty who are adding these really creative, open-ended multimedia projects to their courses. And so we create this kind of showcase or poster session every year of students from around campus and the kind of work that they've been doing in these different courses. And so, and then we video some of the students there during the event. So you can kind of watch a few of those videos on that site and get a sense of some of the projects students have been doing. It's really fun to see the kind of breadth of, you know, there's a student over here who made a robot, a student over here who made a board game, a student here who did some digital restoration of some ancient artifact, a student over here who made a web comic, right? Talking about that was a good one, her experience as an Asian American in the US. And she really cool. Her class project was a web comic, right? And so, you know, it just gives me, I get really excited every year to see all of our students kind of following their passions like that and doing some creative, original work. And so I'm happy for the chance to kind of get them in the room together so they can see each other's work as well.
Yeah, that's super cool. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. I'm sure you might see, you know, some of this content up on the admissions website and YouTube also. So thank you. For the participants, I'm going to drop my email in the chat. If you're watching this at a later time, it's miles.l.borowsky, BOROWSKY, @vanderbilt.edu. Feel free to shoot me any questions you might have. I'm sure Dr. Bruff is open to, you know, questions as well. And yeah, have a great rest of your Tuesday afternoon. And thanks again, Dr. Bruff. Great to talk with you.
Yeah, good to see you, Miles.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye.